Fighters, today I'm excited to talk about how to use marketing to recruit and build your team. There's a lot of low-hanging fruit under your nose. And today my guest, Jeani Ringkob, and we talk about how to market for your ideal employee, your ideal team member. We have some great conversations about what that looks like, about how to identify those people, how to design solutions for them, implement things, and make tweaks along the way so you continue to build your team, grow your business, just like you would growing your customer list. You got to keep building your team. So without any further ado, here is my conversation with Jeani. Jeani, welcome to The Fight. How you doing today?
I am excellent. I'm a little cold, but I'm excellent.
Well, you're in Iowa.
I'm in Iowa.
That's a humid cold. It's a wet cold. I'm in Colorado. It's a dry cold.
I'm from Colorado, and people here are like, oh my gosh, but it's so cold in Colorado. I'm like, no, we shoveled snow in our shorts.
Yeah, I'm from outside Chicago, and so I'm
so you
used
get
to
it.
that Midwest cold. So this is nothing out here.
I know.
But anyway, and you're from, you said Montrose, right? Well, originally Durango and then Montrose. So Montrose, when I coached high school football, they used to kick our ass every year. So Montrose has a great
What
program
year was
out
it?
there.
What year was that?
I coached a high school here in Colorado Springs from 2017, 18, and 19, I think it was.
Okay.
So,
well,
yeah.
I was there before that.
Yeah, just a bit, right? Yeah, there you
just
go.
a bit. I was trying to wonder, like, maybe my brothers were playing, or maybe I was there. No.
So I saw you on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
I don't know, somebody liked something, somebody I know liked something you did or shared something. I was like, hey, who's this? And I started digging a little, and I'm like, let's have a conversation around marketing and hiring and stuff like that. So before we dig in here, give everybody kind of a, who is you and what do you do?
So I would be a third generation construction, highway road construction family. We're in the process of selling that family business to a gentleman that's worked for us for over 30 years. So super exciting. My mom has been running that business for the last 23 years since my dad passed away. So, and she was a dental hygienist by trade, but she's done phenomenal. So super exciting to watch what she's done. And it's like, it gets in your blood and you just can't leave it. I did a stint in agriculture with my husband. A lot of the same producers and suppliers, the Cargills, the Coke Industries. But as soon as I got a chance to get back into construction, I got back into construction. I love the people. I am, like I said, I'm third generation, so it's a little bit in my blood. I'm a firm believer that, and it comes from something my dad said. I asked my dad, why do we pave roads? When I was about 8 years old, and he told me, because I'm just one person, we're just one company, but we get to take part in building the backbone of this country. And I get people somewhere safer. I get goods to the grocery store so people can buy their groceries. I get goods to a business so somebody can own a business. And it changed how I thought about that particular industry, but it really has expanded into all things construction and essential. I think you can kind of put them into that. It's so essential for our country. And because I come from that family business background, I think it's the hardest fight, right? Is to be that contractor. You're putting your everything on the line every single day. I was just talking to somebody that reached out to me this morning. His business is growing incredibly, but he's at that pain point. And it's like, I have to have a different mindset. I have to have different processes and systems now. What I did before is no longer working. Right. And I hate to see that struggle. Like, I want to help the people that are those hero entrepreneurs in these construction essential industries build better businesses.
It's interesting. You talked about, you did a stint in agriculture and stuff with your husband, and then you came back to construction. Most people that grow up in a family construction business spend their time trying to get away from construction. So I'm just curious, like, what were some of the things that you look back now that, your mom's done right over the last 23 years and that your dad did well? What are some of the highlights of that would help somebody?
Oh, absolutely. When I think back to like my dad's time, for him, he didn't necessarily talk to me about the fact that it was relationships, but I was very fortunate. I was just doing a presentation for a client of mine for their sales meeting. a couple weeks ago, and I'm sitting there talking to their sales team, and I'm like, I was doing what you were doing when I was a teenager. And like, you don't even know, like my dad was taking me out on sales calls when I was 8 years old, and he wasn't telling me it's all about relationships. I was watching it, and I was learning it, and I was young. So I had the time to learn it, but I watched how the things that had nothing to do with him getting a project or anything like that really impacted how, the benefits and the lifestyle I had, and the opportunity and the growth of our company and our ability to grow and hire more people, those kinds of things, how he treated people. And it was the same, no matter, it was a first time hire labor that came on to that best customer that's been with us forever. He knew things about them that I would be like, how did you even know that, their son was having that struggle or this or that? And he was so good at listening and capturing those details and understanding that. So I think it's all about relationships. And I think having grown up in the industry, I had men that were peers of my dad's that really stepped in and became mentors for me. I worked for Coke Industries for a while. I worked for Vance Brothers. So I worked in several different companies because I thought it was important to leave the family business even before I did the ag stint and have some different experiences. But I think because he treated people good, I had people that would see me and say, and step up and be a mentor to me, as well as I think that's the culture in this industry, which is part of why I love it, is people want to help people. People want to see other people succeed. Even we can be competitors one day and collaborators the next day, which creates a really great culture and industry culture on a bigger scale. And then when I think about later with my mom, my dad's death was unexpected. So we were actually investing in a $3 million permanent plant in El Paso, Texas. So our business was going to be tripling in size probably. And we were in the middle of that and had an unexpected death, like January 2nd.
Wow.
So it was all hands on deck. It was a crisis scenario. And like watching my mom go through that and grieve at the same time that she's having to like really rebuild herself and recreate herself. And I think she was transparent with those relationships, and people really respected her. I think people were nervous, obviously, at first about what's going to happen to this company. We had contracts with the state. We had employees, we had business partners that were relying on us. Everybody was nervous, but my mom was honest and transparent. And people really, really respected that. And when things weren't good, my mom would put herself and us personally on the line right there with anybody. And it gave people a really great sense of confidence, not just our customers and our partners, our suppliers, but also the people that work for us. And so our turnover with my mom in place was so low, and something I always really admired about her, because she wasn't easy on anybody, but if you went hard, she went to the bat for you. And they saw how hard it was. They saw her learning curve because of that transparency, but her willingness to get gritty with them and do it, and be honest and transparent. So those were some of the things that really stuck with me.
Yeah. So I'm going to go somewhere before we go to where we really want to go here today. And that's because you brought your mom up.
Yeah.
So 23 years ago, it was even more uncommon than it is now for a woman to be running a business in the construction industry, right?
Yes.
And it's becoming certainly more and more common now, and which is great, but it's still pretty uncommon. How do I ask this? All right. I've shared here before that I think it's a mistake when guys are not, let's talk about spouses first. Like a lot of guys in the trades dismiss their spouse's opinions on things because you didn't work in the trades. You come from an insurance background or whatever, right? You worked in an office and all that garbage, right? I've heard it all. Right. And I've personally seen the couples where the female, where the wife is respected, they kick ass. Okay. So I don't want to go too far down that. I'm just trying to set the context here a little bit for my question. So my question is this. All right. And you brag a little bit here. All right. What are one or two, however many superpowers you think that just women just do better than men in this industry? I would just, because I know there's some things there and I have some ideas, but I'm just curious how you see it.
So I'll just brag on my gender just a little bit. I think I could go on forever, and I know a ton of men I can brag about too.
Mm-hmm.
But I think, and it depends on whatever the situation is. This morning, I talked to somebody who had actually had listened to another podcast I was on, and I'm a contractor by heart. Like, I just give out my phone number. I'm like, yeah, just fucking call me. It's fine.
Yeah.
Well, so he did, which is great. I'm like, well, and he's like, are you sure it's okay? I call you. I'm like, yeah. Like, well, tell me about your business. Like, whatever, what's going on? What do you need? And he told me that he actually likes to get advice. Over the years, he's learned that he looks for advice on his business from women professionals.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, I feel like they give me better advice. I feel like they listen and they understand my business better. They get out of like their situation and they get into my situation with me. So I think that is, I guess it's somebody else's words, but I think that's a superpower of the gender. Mm-hmm. Is really being able to, we're kind of caregivers for others by nature. And I think we can leverage that to put ourselves in somebody else's shoes. So I also know that there's research out there that shows, like, if you look at an executive board, studies show that you should have at least 2 women making executive level decisions on any board, because you get better results, quicker results, and actually can execute faster.
Yeah, so, I can go on for quite a while on the benefits to, I think, women in the industry. And and
you asked about my parents. So I'm just going to share a story, because when you were asking this question, it seemed relevant. So my mom was a dental hygienist by trade. Mm-hmm. My grandfather also passed away unexpectedly on my dad, and they lost the business. His sister was dying of leukemia, and he was kind of ended up, and they lost it for a while. And then my mom and dad built it back up. And she was supporting that. Like, she was breadwinner as a dental hygienist for our whole family while he built that business. And everybody that knew my dad knew that story. Everybody. My dad was notorious for telling everybody I wouldn't have a pot to piss in if it weren't for Sandy. Yeah. She did the books for our business and did that because he knew what his strengths were. And we should always play to our strengths. If it's a spouse or it's a team member, my mom is incredible. My mom does the books for my business. She's on it. And she's not a bookkeeper by trade, and then I remember them going to a huge bid. So if you work for highway contracts, a lot of times you're bidding and it's a 3-year contract. So the day that you're bidding is pretty goddamn intense. Like, you get it or you don't get it. Right. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And I mean, there was more than one occasion. My dad always brought my mom after a certain point because he realized the value, because she would show up and she would find errors or mistakes or be like, no, you're bidding this too low because of X, Y, and Z, because she knew the numbers. Yeah. And he knew the business and he knew the people and he knew the projects, but he was open to like whatever she could do. And he was notorious for telling us kids all the time. And he didn't say it in front of my mom to get credit from my mom. Mm-hmm. He just would tell people, like, I couldn't do it without your mom. I couldn't do it without my wife. And I think part of that is what set her up to be okay. Mm-hmm. And another conversation I've recently had about kind of legacy planning, because I get asked about that. And like, I've been in a family business where a crisis happened. And every business owner should be prepared for a crisis. What happens if someday you don't wake up and go to that office? And I would say we were not completely prepared, but some of that relationship that my dad had with my mom were the difference between us making it and not making it. In hindsight, there's definitely things we could have done better. Sure. But it made a huge difference. And also, she had some built-in credibility and respect in the industry because he was always out there saying that about her. That's awesome. That's sounds like they had a special relationship. It's a bummer that it was unexpected like that, of course, but it sounds like you guys have figured it out, and I appreciate you sharing a little bit of that. So for those listening, I invited you on because I don't know if I heard something, read something, whatever the thing I saw was, you were one of the only other people that
kind of says what I say when people go, I need to hire people. And your answer, my answer is always build your brand, right? Just the broad answer, but something you said, and I'm sorry, I don't specifically remember. I just remember like going, okay, I think I want her on the show. And so I went down the rabbit hole of checking you out. So, let's talk a little bit about that whole thing, because as we know, the labor issue is a big deal here in the trades. Right. And it's funny, last couple of years with everything going on in the economy and what everyone's like crying like about the labor pool. And we've been dealing with it in construction for way longer than anybody else has, in my opinion, right? As long as I can remember, it's like, can't find people and all that. And I'd love to just have you share some of your thoughts on, how marketing, your brand, the things that you do tie into helping you recruit, hire, retain, all that stuff. So the floor is yours. Let's get after it here.
All right, let's do it. So this is honestly one of my favorite topics. And I feel I have a marketing background. I've always kind of gravitated towards sales and marketing, but I just kind of geek out on business growth and business strategy. But because you work in this industry, there's always a certain time of year that everybody's panicked about labor, right? But with COVID, I think we accelerated something that was brewing and we should have been more cognizant of. And so in hindsight, I actually went back and did some research and some reading. I was just doing a really big strategy project for the Texas Asphalt Pavement Association for them, because they're actually doing a workforce campaign on behalf of their members, which I think is super progressive, really incredible. And their members should be super pumped about that, because that's a pretty great service to provide. But my approach is always, let's find some qualitative and quantitative data to make decisions. Like, let's not just do marketing and sales by licking our finger and sticking it in the air. So I think there's better ways to make decisions. So when we started that, first off, we did tons of interviews and surveys in Spanish versions, English versions. We talked to owners, we talked to supervisors, we talked to actual labor workforce, truckers, because we really wanted insights and data from the horse's mouth. And a lot of the things that I suspected to be true became true. And a lot of it was just really eye-opening. But one of the things to kind of set up the challenge is, if we go back in history and we look at like the boomers and then Generation X after that, we had almost 75 million baby boomers, which was unprecedented impact on the workforce. They drove at every stage of the boomers, they completely transformed industries, from diapers and then to education and then to automobiles and then to motorhomes. Like, as they aged, they completely transformed it because of the demands that they had for consumption, and also the impact because they were in the labor workforce. So whole industries were born. Innovation was incredible during that time, when you look back at like all the things that happened. And then we had Generation X, which was 65 million people. So we had a 10 million gap. And we also had something that happened it kind of started on a little bit of a political level, when you look at kind of the competition with Russia, Cold War and stuff like that. From a very top government, we started really pushing for 4-year degrees, and families became more influential. Baby boomers wanted their kids to go get 4-year degrees. So we have this weird mindset going on about some of the blue collar industries, the workforce industries, the essential industries that built everything in our country. We have a little bit of a stigma that's formed around that, which I hate to see. But we need to be cognizant of, how did we get where we are right now? And then we had what I call the cover up of the Great Recession. So we have a crisis that was coming, and it was masked by the recession in 2008. So what happened in 2008, boomers didn't retire when everybody thought they would. They kept going. But also at the same time, demand declined because people were feeling a financial pinch. And there was a decrease in job demand. So we had this kind of false hope, and we forgot about the looming problem of not enough workforce going into these super essential areas. So in 2011, there were signs that we were going to have this workforce shortage. Really, that's when we should have been doing all the things that I have companies coming to me now saying, please help me with this. Because HR departments used to sit there and just not even open applications. They're just flooded and they could just sit there with their feet on the desk and do whatever. And now all of a sudden, 2015, 16, that started as like somebody turned off the tap and it started trickling away. And then now they're like, what happened? And then COVID really accelerated that and it made the pain point so much worse. So now everybody's screaming, but we really shouldn't be surprised that we're where we are now.
Right.
There were all kinds of signs. And if you look at the millennials though, and this is what I tell people, like I get lots of grumbling, like nobody wants to work and stuff like that. But I don't think that's true. And it's an excuse not to do anything. And we got to have a better attitude. There are people out there, and there's 75.4 million millennials. That's more than the baby boomers. That's a really good sign. So we got to be able to find some people that want to work in there. Because I know some millennials that work really, really hard. I can look at my cousins and stuff like that. And maybe there's a lot more that don't want to work the way we want to work or in these industries, but there's a hell of a lot out there because there's so many of them. And another exciting thing is their average age is 35. In 10 years, they're going to be at their prime leadership. We want to recruit these people. We need to be nurturing them because we don't have an alternative. There's not another generation that we get to go and pick from. So that's where I kind of decided like, okay, it's onerous on us as organizations and industries to take a proactive approach and say, what are we going to do about this? It's a problem, but we're not going to sit back and just complain about it and solve it. So, but what we have is we have a whole set of tools in marketing and brand strategy in our companies that we've always pointed those in the direction of customers.
Yeah.
And sometimes smart companies are also pointing those assets and tools and spending those dollars towards attracting partners and positioning themselves as well. But we've never stopped and thought about really, are we focusing that? And like, if you think of like an X-ray gun or something, point it towards the people that you're trying to recruit. Because for a lot of people, that's the bottleneck in their business. I have a new client of mine that I've known for a long time. And he came to me this last summer and said, I just turned down a $6 million project because I don't think I can hire another crew. And then a few minutes later, he said to me, I think I should start another business. So in my off season, and I'm like, wait, you want to start another business? Do you remember what it's like starting a business?
Yeah.
Like flashback. Yeah.
How much fuel it takes to get the jet off the ground, right? Like
I'm like, let's just let's just figure out how you can hire another crew and pull in another $6 million with what you're already an expert at, what you already are known for, what you already have a brand that is exceptional at. He has a great reputation.
Yeah.
So
what's that low hanging fruit then? Like what are some of those things that somebody listening to this that's right under their nose, right? There's usually some things right under our noses that we're missing.
So first off, if you're not incorporating marketing into your business, this is a great time to say, if you've always kind of wondered, I don't really know how to use it, or it's not for me, or I don't need it in my business, maybe this is actually a great time for you to say, this might be a great way to incorporate that into my business, start doing it and doing it in a way where I can get really, really good feedback. So we need to think of them and our mindset needs to shift. Our employees and the people that we are trying to recruit are just as important as our customers. If we can't deliver, so if we have a customer and they contract us to do something and we can't execute, then in my book, you never really even had a sale because your ability to deliver and then be able to receive payment from them, that's when a sale is really complete. You have to go through that whole cycle first. So we have to be able to think about if there's something that's stopping us from getting all the way through that sales cycle, then we have to eliminate that roadblock. And if that's labor, then that's where we have to start. So why not use all the assets, our brand awareness, how we message, how we promote our culture, how we get really, really strategic about who are the best people that I want working on my team. I know a lot of people tell me, I've been using Indeed and I get so many applicants. How are they? They suck. And I'm like, all right, well, what are you saying on your job descriptions? How do you differentiate yourself from everybody else? Because guess what? Everybody's doing it.
Well,
So
the
all
key
the same,
phrase that you just said, sorry to cut you up, but the key
no,
phrase you just said there with any marketing, you're marketing for employees to build your team, just like you're going to market for
right,
customers, and you have to be different. You have to stand out. You have, it has
right,
to be something unique. And I was coaching somebody a while back who, wasn't having very much, they were getting a lot of applicants, it was a landscape
right.
foreman job or something many years ago for somebody. And,
Mm-hmm.
and I said, well, what's your, he wanted to recruit somebody that had like experience, and we know those kick-ass people are already working for somebody else, right? They're not sitting
Right.
at home. I said, so what might be running through that person's mind when they go home at night and they're online? Like maybe it's the fact that their boss has been breaking promises for the last 2 or 3 years about things
Right.
they're going to do for them. So long story short, he created a headline, and it was like what a lot of people do in these job ads. I know, this is they put like the whole job description and stuff. There's nothing sexy about that. You want to market, you
No.
want to be a magnet. And so I think the headline, I'll probably butcher it because it was a really long time ago, but it was something along the lines of, is your boss still breaking promises to you, or is your boss
Oh,
still letting you
yes.
down? It was a marketing headline. And in marketing, the
It is,
number
it's
one thing is the
copy.
headline. It's copy.
Right.
And so
Absolutely.
that was and I want to say they picked somebody up within a week or two, because these
Absolutely.
people are going home unhappy, unfulfilled in the culture that they're in, and their eyes always open on something else. But
Right.
so, and then I knew somebody else in the water feature industry. They recruited somebody from the heavy equipment, earth moving or utilities
Mm-hmm.
industry, who this person, they were tired of their work being buried and no one ever seeing it. So their why of wanting to make a shift was they wanted to do work every day that they were proud of. And so these clients of mine recruited this guy out of the utilities industry to build water features that people would see and brag about, and he could
Right.
point to. So his pain point, if you want to call it that, was he wanted to take pride in his work every day. And so this is the type of stuff that
Right.
I encourage people to, when you're running an ad, you guys just don't go foreman position, landscaping, like.
If you're looking at what everybody else is doing, you want yours to stand out. And I'll give you an example. First off, I'm going to break this down. So we're going to talk about, I have a 4-step process, and I use it if we're deploying strategy and marketing for recruiting and retaining talent, or if we're growing your business. And it's more about capturing more sales, more profit margin, anything like that. And it starts with identification. First off, like, who do you want? Who's your customer, or who's your best employee?
Yep.
What do they want? So, and this is all about gathering data. What are the bottlenecks in your business?
Mm-hmm.
Who do you need? What do you need? All of those things. So I do tons of research when I work with customers. They're always really, really surprised about that. They're like, why are we spending so much on this time? And once you start telling them what you're learning, and they're like, my customer said that, my partner said that,
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, yes. And that's how we're going to inform our decisions as we move forward. So first you have to identify. To your point about specifically job descriptions, I've done a big strategy project for a client last, earlier this year. Now I'm actually contracted as their fractional chief marketing officer.
Mm-hmm.
And they are actually adding another business category on, and they need to hire for this. And the person they hired for this branch, I did the job descriptions, and he's looking at them, and I mean, he can barely talk. He's like, I have to run these past the owner because I don't think we can put this out there. And I mean, I was like, well, yeah, I got a little cheeky. And he's like, a little cheeky. And I'm like, he's like, I've never seen a job description like this. And I'm like, yep, I know.
That's the point.
I'm not talking to your engineering customer right now.
Yeah.
I'm not talking to your supplier or your equipment supplier. I'm talking to your labor. Mm-hmm. And I was very, very strategic about the words and the target. And that came from all that research. Mm-hmm. Like I wasn't doing this like frivolously. And the owner and I have been working together for a long time. So it was really great. He went and showed the owner, and he was so nervous. He thought he was going to be in big trouble.
Yeah.
And the owner was like, this is awesome. I love it. I've never seen anything like it.
There you go.
Because at every single step in my 4-step process, I have a litmus test for everything that may become something that becomes executable in my recommendations. And is it differentiated? Is it relevant to your customers, your target? So in this case, that'd be prospects you're trying to attract and retain as talent for your team. And is it sustainable? Can your business have a unique advantage and really hold its ground against competition? Your competition in this case is everybody else who's trying to hire. And it's not, if you're a landscaping company, it's not just a landscaping company. It's a manufacturing job. It's a fast food restaurant job. It's all those things. Yeah. And whoever knows the problems and the pain points of that audience best and who can speak to it and meet them where they're at is the one that's going to win.
Love it.
So then the next step is design. And that's basically like, based on everything that we figured out, how are we going to design a solution? That may include, how do we talk to them? So we actually develop messaging. If you need a whole brand, or, where are you going to show up? Are you going to use what tools are you going to implement? Are you going to use social media to attract people? Are you going to go out and do actual events? And so, and once again, I look at those, my 3 litmus tests. So we did this big strategy project. And so events, everybody says, oh, job fairs. I'm like, okay, great. I'm not saying give up job fairs, but let's look at the litmus test. Differentiation. Can we find a way to execute this and design a solution that's differentiated? So we started doing a bunch of research, talking to a whole bunch of other companies that are trying some different stuff. So they have a whole list of go to camping shows, go to RV things, hunting, fishing, gun shows, right? Because the same demographic that we learned we needed from the research is showing up at those events as well. And when you show up with this job opportunity and messaging that's been crafted, and that cheeky job description, right? Or that testimonial from somebody on a project that's like somebody they can relate to instead of some business owner talking to them, they're going to go, this was really unexpected. I didn't plan to see this today, and I'm interested in this, or my cousin's interested in this, or something like that. So really designing things that differentiate when we are at the design phase. The third phase would be implement. And that's, how are you going to implement? And I like to, I mentioned that conversation earlier today, and that gentleman's business he's at a growing pain. He's grown so much, but they've really not implemented a lot of processes and systems. Yeah. So, how can we build processes and systems so that a great idea is no good if you can't execute it? You don't have the ability to execute it. You don't have the team to execute it. And I like to do things one time the hard way, build a process, and then just make it, how can we automate it, replicate it, and then measure it? I want to know that it's working and we can keep making it better, but I'm not reinventing the wheel every single time we do payroll, for example, right? Yeah. Processes and systems. And I will borrow and cut and paste from any other business. I don't care. Yeah. Or we'll create our own, whatever is going to get the job done. So implementation in an efficient way. And then the last phase is investigate. And I call this a flywheel because you're really never quite done. While we're in the design and the implementation, step 2 and 3, we're looking for metrics. What are we going to measure so that we know that what we designed and then we implemented is actually working, and, only change what's going to make it better. Yeah. I don't want to reinvent it, but I'm not saying I won't tweak it to make it better. And so we're always still investigating. And if you think about it, you should have at least annually some kind of way of collecting feedback from your employees that tells you how you're doing on hiring. Are you hiring the right people? Where did they learn about it? 97% of Spanish speaking labor force, construction force type employees come from word of mouth. I knew it was high, but I didn't know it was that high until I did the research, and I did it myself. And even in English speaking, it was still like 76%. It was still incredibly high. So you have to know those things, because what that dictates, are you going to push heavier, more time, energy, and assets in this type of recruitment strategy or this other one? Maybe you're going to go hard on really trying to incentivize referral programs in your company because you know that. But dig deep into, how did you refer about us? What motivated you to be willing to say something to your nephew? Yeah. Because the answers are all right there. They will give you the answers. If you ask, but you have to have a built-in system to measure your metrics and always be gathering feedback for those data points.
That's not surprising. I'm thinking back, to our, for sure, all of our Hispanic employees many years ago all came from word of mouth. Like the one guy I found through word of mouth from my uncle, and then he just had at this network, right?
Right.
And whenever I'm just thinking back to whenever I ran ads, we had very little success on ads. Now, to be fair, I didn't know what I know now about running ads, right? And the headlines and the copy, right? So, but our best people always came from word of mouth, which goes back. I know you do workshops and speaking as I do a workshop where one of the things we talk about is that success is an inside out game. Okay. So if I want profit at the end of the rainbow here, all right, it all starts with me as a leader, the culture I build, and employee satisfaction in that order. Okay. Yes. So it's an inside out game. And so for those of you that just heard these stats, what was it for non-Hispanic, 76 or 67 or whatever it was?
76, I think roughly. Yeah.
Whatever. So 76, at least 76, 80% of anyone you're ever going to hire, you guys, is going to come from your existing team. Minimum from your existing team. So what are they saying about you at the barbecue? Right.
Yes.
What are they making enough money where they could pull up in a new ride and brag about it? And somebody goes, damn, man, what do you do for a living? Oh, I work for such and such construction. Get out of here. Are they hiring? Like this is, you have to invest in your people. And, because this is just like, it's no different than word of mouth marketing for getting projects. So, so you got to invest in that. So I want to, I know we could talk for days on this, but I want you to dig into one thing.
Yeah.
A little more, and then I'll ask where people can find you and all that stuff, because I think this will be of great help. The first step that you had was identify. Can you pull back the curtain a little bit of what it might look like, what it might sound like to identify your ideal hire?
So, yeah. And I'll give you kind of an insight as to what I see happening a lot right now is, a lot of times right now, we start a project, and especially if we're talking about recruiting, we're looking towards that employee side and we're wanting to focus in that direction. Typically we're going to start with, we always are doing research, and I have a team, and we, research from government stats, all that kind of stuff, their specific industry, their geographic region, all of those things are relevant, and we start that research. But I like to really talk to people. So we usually do surveys, and we actually do interviews. We go out and start interviewing, and we look at who are your best employees. Who do you wish you could have clone. 10 of, right? Who do you want to clone? Start with them. And that's who you interview. And you really get strategic about, what do I need to know from them? And this comes from years of me doing it, so it takes a while to kind of figure this out. But, how did they learn about you? Ask the ugly questions too, which sometimes it's nice to have somebody else besides somebody in the company do this, because they may not want to tell you. They may be hesitant. And why that's super important is, a couple times recently, I've went in with companies that are like, it's been a struggle, but we have an opportunity to expand our business. So we were really thinking about recruiting. And what they forget is they may have a retention problem, and they don't even know it yet.
Yeah.
And we go in and we start doing the interviews to find this out. And I've had to go back and have some really uncomfortable conversations with them and say, look, we actually need to pump the brakes a little bit, because you're about to have a mass exodus and you don't know it yet. I've been in companies where there was about to be a huge mass exodus because of culture problems or a bad supervisor. And a lot of times I've seen, especially in construction, one bad supervisor can lose you a whole crew that's maybe 80, 90% great. Fire the supervisor, but you don't know that unless you have that feedback loop from the crew underneath him, or maybe his peer supervisors. You think he's great because he's telling you whatever he needs to tell you, right? It's everybody else's fault. So you have to be collecting that information somehow. So I've had some uncomfortable situations where I'm like, we're actually not going to be recruiting first. We're going to start with retention, because it's going to be less expensive for us to make sure that we retain these folks first. And your company is probably going to have to make some significant changes based on the feedback. And we're going to have to work kind of internally And then second step, or step B of, 1B is going to be, then we deploy what we're learning and start trying to recruit at the same time. But if you're like, these are things that if you're not asking the questions, you don't know.
What I hope people are hearing is, to do this right, it's a strategic thing. It's not a tactical thing, right? We always want to start, especially in the marketing world, right?
Right.
Hey, I'm doing Facebook ads. I'm doing Google ads. I'm doing billboard. Those are all tactics.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. But what's the strategy? So for instance, the example I use here all the time in the fight is one of our marketing strategies with the fight is to be the best educators in the industry.
Right.
For contractors. Okay. That's our strategy. And that will always be a constant strategy, but the tactics could change. Right now, this is a podcast. There's a video. It could be, speaking at an event. Those are all the different tactics. So you guys listening to this, hiring isn't one of those things where you wake up and go, shit, I need to hire a guy. Give me a warm body that shows up. Okay. That this should be, Jeani, I don't know how you feel about this, but I have some pretty strong feelings on this, obviously. I look at recruiting for your team kind of like a college football team recruits players. They have a recruiting division. They're on the road. They're traveling. They're meeting people. They're whining and dining them. They're meeting their parents. I'm not saying that's the case with all this in construction, but the point is, I mean, guys, go to Google and type in Nick Saban dances for recruit. Like, he went and danced,
right.
He's doing like some dance party thing at a recruit's house, many years ago, because he understood that you got to market to these people. You got to get them to want to come to your school. And it's the same with your company. Mm-hmm. And I would say even before that, make sure you're the type of leader and you're intentionally typing the type of culture that people want to be a part of, because winners don't want to stick around a place where they can't keep winning in life.
Right. Absolutely.
So one more question here real quick. Talk about this process and the strategy behind it and all this research and these questions. The first thing I'm thinking, I imagine a lot of people are thinking, is, fuck, this is going to take forever to find somebody. Okay. So speak to the expectations of the time frame to do it right.
To do it right, I mean, so when I go in and do something like this, it's a month to 2 months to really do the work and mm-hmm. to build. So you identify, you design, and then you present, so you're ready to implement. And, so a lot of implementation is where it depends on, do you have the assets and tools? Yeah. How willing is the top level, right? The leadership, like you said, inside out, how willing are they to do this? Are you unwilling to change your mind about the fact that you need to depend on millennial? Mm-hmm. Are you, committed to just keep bad mouthing a generation, even though you need them? Some of those things are relevant. So that matters. So a lot of it depends on the willingness of the company to make those changes, what things they may have in place. So if they're already active and they've been working on the marketing and they're active on social media, and they need to add some strategy to that in terms of talking about culture, talking about their team, showcasing wins as part of the strategy, it's easier. If they're starting from square one on that specific implementation tool that we're deploying, it's a little bit harder. So things like that. But I think right now is a great time for most of us. We're in a down cycle. I know I just another client that we're working more on this is we are writing their job descriptions right now. We are filling out their calendar with what events are they going to go to? How are they going to change their process of pulling in recruits from word of mouth campaigns internally in their company? And part of that's we can actually create tools and things to help make it easy for our employees to talk about our business.
Yeah.
So now's a really great time to do it, but I would say you need to plan on 2 months. But when you learned how to do the trade of what you did, it was slow and painful.
Yeah.
And it got easier and easier. And the best time to plant a tree is yesterday. But if you didn't plant it yesterday, you better plant it today.
Yep. Because
the one thing that I say about workforce is it is never going to be like it was 20 years ago. Mm-mm. You are always the only companies, there are so many millennials out there. The companies that do this will never worry about workforce again. Mm-hmm. And they will have a system in place, and it's just like your customers. You're going to keep some and you're going to lose some. You always have to have an automated functioning pipeline pulling into your business. And so if you don't put that stuff together right now, you're in really big trouble. So are you going to be the one that puts it together now and puts in the grit and the sweat equity now? Or are you going to be the one that's not in business down the road? That's kind of what I say. But I would say, you need to plan on 2 months to really get all the way through to implementation and ready to implement. Well, and then it takes a while for traction. Yeah. It's a flywheel. Right. And as you go, every single hiring season, every single month, your momentum is going to pick up and pick up and pick up.
Well, again, it's no different than marketing for clients. I mean, you're marketing for clients year round. Why are you not marketing to build your team and recruiting year round?
Right.
Right. So, so it sounds like your call to action for people. Number one, put eyeballs on your current team. How they doing? Right. Let's start there. So nobody leaves. So nobody leaves that shouldn't be leaving.
Right.
Okay.
Get a pulse on that.
Yeah. Get a pulse on that and shore that up. And then maybe look at some ways to get them sharing and talking a little more, get that word of mouth kicked up, and then work on the outside world recruiting. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely get a pulse on your internal team before you get too focused on that external push, just to make sure, it's better to handle a crisis up front than be scrambling. If you lose your whole workforce and you knew you needed to hire to expand and grow, you're back on your heels.
Yeah. So before we get out of here, tell us about StoryBuilt Marketing.
So StoryBuilt Marketing, we have all kinds of, we're always posted. We met on LinkedIn. That's where I hang out. That's where I share all my geeky information. I'm kind of like the geeky contractor's daughter. So I'm always posting stuff on there. I'm actually going to be at Con Expo this year. So if anybody's going to be at that event, we're actually going to be talking about business growth strategy. I'm doing 2 presentations, and I'm also going to be talking about this topic as well, hiring and recruiting. And we're going to go into this actual process. We're going to have slides. We're going to have some tools and resources. So it's going to be pretty fun. But you can always just, I think I told you earlier on, like, I'm a little bit crazy. Like, just call me. You guys can call me. You can email me. And I have a assessment tool on the website you can do if you're like, I know my business has a bottleneck. I'm not sure where it's at. It's kind of a fun assessment tool that you can figure out. Is it sales and marketing? Is it profitability? Is it the order and processes in my business? Or do I need to be working on some legacy stuff? So it's kind of a fun tool because we get so busy working in our businesses, especially in the construction industry, in these essential industries. It's hard to step back and take that big view.
Yep. Well, we'll get all the links in the show notes, guys. So scroll down and check that out. I guess last question, just out of the blue here. I keep looking behind you. You got some books there. Somebody needs to read a book this month. What book do you recommend?
Oh my gosh. I would say one of my, I think, pardon me. One of the things, I'll give you another one that you can put in the show notes because I can't think of the title off the top of my head, but it talks about workforce.
Okay. I
just recently read it and it's really great. For all your marketing, I would recommend Building a Story Brand by Donald Miller. He breaks down and he talks about the psychology of how we make decisions, understanding the problem. And it works for so many things. It works for how do you talk to your customers? How do you talk to your internal team? I've had companies where they just need to activate their team better, get their team on board, get them ready for a big change. And we use a lot of the messaging frameworks from that even there. They're absolutely applicable. Like when I said I wrote that cheeky job description. Yeah. But yet when we're, so I'm writing a cheeky job description and we're also writing a case study for engineers and owners of multi-million-dollar projects at the same time. Yeah. Very different, but it's the same company.
Same company. Yep.
Right. But you can use a very simple framework that they use in there to give you a really good starting place. Awesome. So Donald Miller's Building a Story Brand, I think is a great framework that you'll just pull out again and again. But yeah, follow me on LinkedIn because I'm always reading, I'm always sharing insights, and I geek out on this stuff. So if you don't want to geek out on it, but you want to benefit from it, make sure you follow me or just give me a call and ask your geeky question or say, what the hell is wrong with my business? And we'll try to figure it out together.
There you go. I love it. Well, Jeani, I appreciate you hanging with us here today. Everybody, we'll get everything in the show notes, so check out what she's got going on there. Give us a rating, give us a review, share this with another contractor. And with that, you guys rock. We got to roll. We're out of here. We'll see ya.